All righty, let's take our seats and get started with our Sunday school lesson. Um, we've been talking about the Messiah, Jesus the Messiah, and we're studying this lesson, the Son of God who died for us. Turn to Matthew chapter 2. Now, this is a remarkable verse. I'll start at verse number 1, chapter 2, verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. Now, that's all we know about these guys. They were wise men and they were from the east. It's been speculated, of course, if you see these little Christmas displays, you might even have one that you put up at Christmas. And it's usually a little manger, and there's the little baby Jesus in the manger, and there's Joseph and Mary, and then there's some shepherds and a couple sheep and a cow, and a donkey in the little stable, and then you'll see these guys dressed in robes, and usually the standard fare is one is Chinese looking, and one is African, and then one is Caucasian of some sort from. Now the Bible doesn't say anything like that at all. All we know is they were wise men from the east. Now, the area of Babylon and Persia was known for its scholarship. There was all kinds of universities, what we would call places of learning. Usually they had a library of books, which was very rare in those days. And obviously by the gifts these guys gave, they were pretty well off. So they were either some kind of high muckety-muck scholars, or maybe princes that also studied the wisdom. And you say, well, how in the world did they know what they said in verse 2? Verse 2 saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. How in the world did they know that? Well, of course, the Jews went off into captivity in Babylon, and then the Persian Empire, the Medes and the Persians, took over the Babylonian Empire, and the Jews were under them for a spell, and then they came back to the land. So that means everything from Genesis, probably most of the major prophets, Jeremiah certainly, a lot of the minor prophets that were written kind of early, they had copies of those books in Babylon somewhere, or Persia, in one of these libraries. And these fellows had been studying what the Bible said about Jesus the Messiah. And the Bible does talk in the Old Testament about a star. It does. And I'm just trying to find the cross-reference here. I think it's Isaiah 63, I think. Let's see if that's the right reference. Yeah, that's what the center column says. Okay, well, this talks about light. Verse 60, verse 1, arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. That's not exactly the verse I'm thinking of, but that'll do. Obviously, light and some strange lighting star, sun, or something is obviously connected with Jesus the Messiah. And there's another verse somewhere in the Minor Prophets talks about the star. So they did a lot of studying. So they knew that the King of the Jews, the Messiah, was coming out of the book of Daniel. They knew that. And so when they saw this strange astronomical event, they decided to go follow it. Now, that's another thing we know about Babylon and Media Persia. is they were great astronomers. They were one of the first people to study the heavens and to map out the stars. And I don't know if you've ever been out in the country on a very clear night, but that's some job to map the stars. I mean, you go out there and it's just, you just look and you can't believe how many stars there really are up in the sky. So these people managed to study that. And see, the sky is always moving because the earth is going around and around. We're going around the sun. And so they kept track of all that. And they kept track of the different constellations. As a matter of fact, most of the constellations we have came from those people. So these are wise men. At least we know they've been studying the scriptures and they've been studying the heavens. So they're pretty smart people, and they've come to worship the Jews. The king of the Jews, rather, worship with the Jews, their king. They figured, okay, Israel's been promised this great Messiah. They ought to be extremely happy. And what did they do? They got there and they find it not so much. Matter of fact, the Pharisees had to go look up some references while they stood there in front of the king. And so, because they didn't know what in the world these people were talking about. And once they figured out what was going on, of course, Herod wanted to kill all the little babies. Now, this was about a year or maybe two after the birth. So they were no longer in the little cattle shed. They weren't in the manger. They were living in a house. The Bible says that later on in this chapter. And so they came, look at verse number 9. And when they heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them. So this, whatever this was, it moved around. They saw in the east before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding joy. And when they were coming to the house, so they were living in a house at this point, and Jesus was probably a little older. But the Lord knew that these people were going to have to go into Egypt and flee Herod. And so they brought all this expensive stuff. I imagine that they went and sold that stuff immediately after those fellows left. And especially since God told Joseph what to do. And they probably said, well, thank you, Lord, for providing ahead of time all this stuff so we can go to Egypt. It wasn't easy to travel. It wasn't cheap to travel. It's not like they had a shuttle camel train going into Egypt, you know, or take the U camel or you know whatever, or the U caravan. They got there and it cost them money. And of course, when they came out of Egypt, they had to go to Nazareth and start making a living. So these wise men, they saw this star. There's two terms that's used nowadays. Does anybody know what that stands for? Unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, this is anything that's out of the ordinary, that's not a star or a comet or anything that can identify. Now, in this same category is a subcategory, is something that y'all know what it is. What is this? An unidentified flying object. So, this star was neither of these. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it was a spaceship or something. Why? No, it wasn't. It was a star. This was a miracle. Now, I'm not sure what this star was. It was a bright, shining thing. It probably was an angel. Because if you go to the book of Revelation, you'll find that stars and angels have kind of a connection with one another. So here's this bright, shining angel, and he's moving through the sky. Now, I don't know what people see when they see some of this stuff. Sometimes they see glowing orbs going through the sky at night. I thought I saw something like that on the beach. I used to go down to the beach when I was single, like at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to see bikinis and all that stuff. So I'd like to go. I'd go down there and I'd pray and I'd sit by the seashore and enjoy the. And occasionally there'd be somebody fishing at that time of night. But you could see all kinds of things in the stars. Of course, we were down by the naval base down there. So who knows what you're seeing. But that's not what these guys saw. It wasn't a UFO. It wasn't an unidentified aerial phenomenon. It was just kind of something that God sent along. And it was special. And after his job was done, we don't hear any more of it. It just disappeared again. Well, that's certainly not got to do with any of these things. Turn to John 19. So, the wise men were expecting everybody to say, "Hail Messiah, oh boy, he's come." And they didn't find that. They found a bloodthirsty king that was jealous, that killed a bunch of babies because he felt threatened. That's some poor human being, I'll tell you what. You say, are folks like that going to get greater damnation? The Bible talks about greater damnation. I think so. I mean, look, you got, people that don't know the gospel and never knew the gospel, and God may give them a chance somehow to be saved, and they reject it. I can't believe that they're going to suffer as much as somebody like Adolf Hitler or Herod or somebody that was just awful. If God's a just God, he's going to have some sort of differentiation of punishment. But that's a different lesson. John 19:12. John 19:12. All right. And from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, "If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar." Wow. What a statement for the Jews at the time to make. Well, they were a little afraid of Caesar and his army. We forget that Israel at the time was an occupied country. Every which way you turn, you saw a bunch of Roman soldiers gallivanting around. You go to the marketplace, and there's probably a couple of them keeping an eye on everything. You go to the synagogue, and there's probably one at the corner of the building watching to make sure everything went okay. So, and they brought Jesus. Now, look, the people that brought Jesus out of the garden and, spit on him and pulled on his beard and then they delivered him to Pilate, they were kind of very... the only other word I can think of is quisling. I mean, they're cowardly. If they really believed Jesus was blaspheming, does anybody know the Old Testament punishment for that? Stoning. If they did what was biblical, they would have stoned Jesus. Why didn't they? Because that's not what God predicted would happen to the Messiah. So they were fulfilling the scriptures, even though they didn't know it, and didn't really believe it. That's the weird thing about God. He can make people do what he wants them to do, and they don't even know they're doing it. Verse 13. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. Gabbatha. Yeah, Gabbatha. All these little syllables. Now, what that basically was a place of judgment. You had a chair that was kind of like a throne. It probably wasn't really fancy, but it was sitting up on a dais somewhere. And then there was a flat floor, and this was probably inside the palace. And you probably had Roman guards on this side and Roman guards on this side. And if it was a regular court case, you probably had some lawyers and things maybe on a table. You know, it was very similar to what we have in our courts. It just was designed a little different. And so they would bring the prisoner up to the bar in front of the chair, and Pilate would judge that person. This is getting real official here, okay? When he's just talking to Jesus before, it's like he's interrogating him. It's sort of like the thing like you see in the movies where they get the suspect in the little room at the table, and one guy's sitting on one side of the table and the suspect is sitting on the other side, and they grill him. Well, that's what Pilate sort of did to Jesus a couple of times. He wanted to find out his side of the story. Well, Jesus wasn't going to tell him the story. He was being very evasive because he knew that it was Pilate's destiny to put him on a cross. So that's what was going on. Can you imagine how much God loved you to do that for you? Knowing that he could have got out of it, he could have told his side of the story, but he didn't. So he brings Jesus into the judgment seat. Verse 14, and it was the preparation of the Passover in about the 6th hour. And he said unto the Jews, Behold, your king. So he had got the message loud and clear that Jesus had claimed to be the King of the Jews, the Messiah. He didn't have a clue what that meant, but he knew what the title was. And he was giving the Jews a chance to kind of repent a little bit and back down, because he had found out there was nothing wrong with this man. He didn't deserve death. But his own countrymen were pushing this Roman guy to kill him. I wouldn't like to be in that situation, would you? It was terrible. But Pilate didn't have a lot of backbone. And they cried out, Away with him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priest answered. Now notice that at that point the chief priest stands up and speaks for the crowd of people. We have no king but Caesar. Then they delivered him therefore unto them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away. This was the final rejection of the King of the Jews. Up until this point, the leaders of the nation of Israel, the priests, had a chance, and Herod the king had a chance to say, this is our Messiah, we're going to own him, and we're going to let him lead us. But that's not what they wanted to do. And really, truly, they perpetrated one of the most horrible things ever done to a human being. Some guy they knew was innocent, they killed. But you see, Jesus was the Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world. The Jews had been taking little lambs and pure white sheep without a blemish on them, and had been sacrificing for thousands of years up on an altar. And somehow they didn't get the connection between that and the Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world. And at that point, he became a redeemer. A redeemer. All right. Let's look at this word redeemer. Why do you put this beginning on a word? What does it mean? Well, Clay, if I said your tires are retread, what would I mean? Yeah, it's a do-over. You've done it a second time. It's a second doing of something. Okay? This word here, now we don't usually think of this word by itself, because it's usually connected with something else. But what does the word deem mean? And it is an English word. All right.
I deem you
ago. I deem you the most handsome girl in Pensacola. Okay? What does that mean? That in my opinion, I'm telling you that you're the most beautiful girl. I'm giving you, this has to do with value. Okay? Value. That's a you. What is value? If something has value, it's worth something. Okay? So, you revalue something. Why would you need to revalue it? What has happened to it that it needs revaluing? It's lost its original value. See, that's what sin does to mankind. When God first made human beings, they had great value to God, and what sin came in and did is it devalued everybody from that point on. So, this indicates a person. So what is a redeemer? What does he do? He's got a job. He's the person that gives back value. He's a redeemer. He's a redeemer. Now, years ago, I've used this illustration before. How many remember S&H green stamps? You go to the store, you spend your money, and the store made a deal with S&H Green that if you spent money at that store, they would give you so many little stamps for so much, well, whatever you spent. Like if you spent $10, you might get 5 stamps. If you spent $20, you might get 10 stamps. Okay? And they give you little books, and then you lick them and you paste in the book. When you got enough little books that were all filled up, you take them to the Redemption Center, and some guy at the Redemption Center would revalue those stamps to you, and you could pick out stuff. A lamp, or a vase, or a wagon, or whatever the heck. What Jesus Christ did on the cross was he redeemed mankind. He was a redeemer. He died so that you could have value with God again. Amen. That's what he did. And you don't need to go to the Greek. You don't need to go to the Hebrew. You don't even really need a dictionary to figure this out. It's just plain old English. And he's a redeemer. So what did he do to redeem you and me? Turn to Isaiah 53. Because it starts talking about this thing of a Savior. Not only is the Messiah going to be someone who rules over Israel, but they're going to save Israel and everybody else, by the way. Whosoever will may come. What a statement. What does the old song say? Shout, shout the sound. All the world around. Isaiah 53, verse number 4. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. Oh, there's another word. You notice another word there with a double E? See that word in there? T-E-E-M. That word and that word is related. What does this word mean?
Hold up and appreciate.
Okay.
Value.
You value something to begin. This is a revalue. This is an original value. Now, Jesus Christ was the Son of God. He could heal people. He could feed the 5,000. He was a walking, talking miracle. Think of the value that he had to the people that he touched in his life. Yet, they treated him like a piece of trash. They stuck him on a cross. They beat him. They crowned him with thorns. And eventually, he died there on that cross. Why? Because we didn't think, his own people didn't think enough of him, and they just handed him over to die. They were jealous, and they got the crowd to see. There was a little cabal of people that were against Jesus, and for the most part, when Jesus walked and talked and went up and down the land, the Bible says the common people heard him gladly. But what this little cabal of people, since they were the leadership, they got people on their side, and they started telling lies, and more lies and more lies. And finally they got a whole bunch of people that all of a sudden thought Jesus wasn't very good anymore. Now this teaches you something about people. One day you can get fed, you and 4,099 others, okay? And the next day, Jesus who? That's the way people are.
That even works with TV today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I bought seasons 1 through 4 of Gunsmoke that was played in the 50s. Okay? It was a half-an-hour show in black and white. Now, I grew up watching these shows, reruns of them. And people would appear in them, and I say, yeah, I know that guy. He was in this and that and the other. But I'd show it to anybody young in this room, and you wouldn't know who these people were. But at the time, they were very famous people. But that's the way people are. There's no lasting fame to anything. Now, occasionally you get someone that kind of stands above, like in the acting world, you got Charlie Chaplin. But if I named you a dozen actors that appeared in movies at the same time Chaplin was making movies, you'd say, who? Does anybody know who Fatty Arbuckle is? Oh, you know who Fatty Arbuckle is, but you got some age on you. Nobody else knows. Yeah, you know. See, he was a very famous comedian back in the days when Charlie Chaplin was making movies. And there was some kind of scandal that he had. Lillian Gish. Anybody ever heard of Lillian Gish? Yeah, some of the older ones do. She was a leading lady. She was the leading lady. They called her the It Girl because they couldn't say the other word. Well, if the Tubi grip fits, wear it. Okay. Well, I'm in trouble now. All right. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquity. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we're healed. All those statements are payments for sin. What have you got here? You've got wounding. You've got bruising. You've got chastisement. You've got stripes. You've got all kinds of punishments. Jesus Christ suffered every single one of them. And when he did so, he took on all this sin. He wasn't guilty of a single sin, and he had to take all that sin on. Why did he do that? Because he was the Redeemer. Somebody had to pay for those books of green stamps. He paid for the price. I hate to use such a petty analogy. All right, next week we're going to look at what happened to him, how he suffered on the cross a little bit. There's people that suffered worse things. There are in history. You can't say he suffered worse than anybody. You can't say that because that's not true. But it was plenty enough, folks. Let me put it this way. You wouldn't want to go through it. And you wouldn't want your kids to go through it, or your neighbor. And you know what? If you've got a person that you don't like, you wouldn't want them to go through it either. But yet he did it willingly. Heavenly Father, help us now as we come to you. And I pray you just bless us in the coming service. Thank you for what you do, Lord. Thank you that you're our Redeemer who suffered for us. Help us to always remember that love. And God, to esteem it very highly, God. Help us to